Enjoy the ride with Crystal Petrie Consulting. So inspiring. Pushing you to your dreams.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of 60 Minutes With. I'm your host, Crystal Petrie. On this week's episode, we are going to learn about sex trafficking. We're going to learn how to spot sex trafficking and what you can do to help prevent it. And here to educate us on sex trafficking is Brittany DeLaGarza from the Harvest House.
Yes.
And here at the Harvest House, you guys help victims of sex trafficking, correct?
Yes, that's our main focus. Yes.
Excellent. So my first question obviously is, what is sex trafficking?
So sex trafficking is something that happens to people when they're being forced or with fraud or coercion, that they are brought into the life of trafficking and they're being exploited for money.
Okay. And who is most affected by sex trafficking?
So historically, it has been women and girls that are affected by trafficking. We definitely do see other marginalized communities though as well.
Are boys trafficked? Because I feel like, just like you said, it's girls and females that we like see on the commercials and the billboards. Yeah. But is this something that boys and men should be worried about as well?
Oh yeah, because of it being so, I guess, hard to identify, I think that a lot of guys are not coming forward with what's happening, and so we do see that boys and men do not feel like they have a space to come forward about it, but it definitely is happening to them too.
And what would, because of course I feel like boys and men, they kind of have that ego and don't want to put themselves out like that. How would they be able to do that and get past the stigma of it?
Right. I think it's what it will take is like a cultural reset, like us being able to like have these hard conversations, and especially with men like not feeling encouraged to open up and let out things that have happened to them and emotions. Like if we are able to change the narrative and make that platform with prevention in schools starting very young, they'll feel more encouraged to speak up about things.
Why is sex trafficking an underreported crime?
It's so underreported because whenever this is happening, it is so almost in a way that people can't tell it's happening. They can't identify the signs because they may not know. And also just like the lack of, information and sometimes misinformation is out there. So people don't know how to report it or even how to even begin identifying it.
Two follow-up questions to that. One, what is some of the miseducation behind sex trafficking? And two, what are some signs that people need to look for whenever, I guess, just really in your everyday life, right?
Right. And I think with the misinformation and miseducation, I think that people believe that this is happening not here. It's happening in other countries. It's happening like globally, and it definitely is. It is a global problem. It's a problem all across the U.S., but locally, it's happening too. And so people have their guards down. They think it's not happening in my community. And so that misinformation is kind of a negative in a way.
And what are some signs, especially like in the smaller communities and cities, that maybe people should maybe give you a red flag if I see this?
Yes. So there are signs. It is sometimes a little bit difficult for people that just don't know about the problem to see them, but we do push education about red flags. So large amounts of cash, if there is a kid that seems to be having like abuse at home, it's going to look very much like there is some sort of abuse happening. There'll be sometimes bruises, even tattoos are indicators. Typically tattoos on children are like a red flag, but these are very much like brandings from traffickers. So sometimes barcodes or initials, that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah. And why is it, or is it difficult to prove sex trafficking in the court of law?
So with adult cases, they have to prove that there was force, fraud, or coercion for them to be able to get the justice that they need, which I think, that they should definitely make more changes on, because it shouldn't be that kind of difficult process. But for children, which was what Harvest House focuses on, we make sure that like they have all these possible resources so that when they do have to go to court and testify, they are able to give that clear and strong testimony along with the evidence, and it's much easier when it is in cases that they don't have to prove there was force or fraud.
I know for me, and of course we all live in our own little bubble, but I know for me, I started hearing about sex trafficking maybe 10 or 15 years ago.
Yeah.
But how long has it really been around?
Well, it's really been around for thousands of years, if you think about it. I mean, historically, like, women and girls were prostituted out back in, the years, and then in the 1900s, it became a political issue. And so then it became the forefront, and then in the early 2000s, people really started paying attention, and so it has gone through this progress, but it's always been around.
Now, with my research and getting ready for this interview, I read, and I was appalled by it, that sex trafficking just became a federal crime in the year 2000.
I know, it seems like crazy. You would think that would have happened so much sooner, but
Yes.
Because of the stigma that this was child prostitution, or that it was all prostitution, and then now people are starting to get into the weeds of it. Like, how did people get to this point? What are the factors that traffickers are using to basically entrap these people and make them feel as if they are slaves to their traffickers? Yeah.
Why is sex trafficking considered an invisible crime?
Because it can happen anywhere, right under your nose, in any place. I think that most people think it's happening like in a seedy hotel, but it can happen even in homes as well.
Really?
Yes.
Because really, and we'll get to it, but one of my questions is like the location that these things are happening.
Right.
And in my mind, that's exactly what I see.
Right.
The seedy motel with the lights,
Yes.
broken out and
Yeah.
things like that. But
And-
that's not it.
And another thing is social media plays such a huge part of trafficking now.
Really?
Yes.
How?
Well, with TikTok, Instagram, gaming apps, they are giving more and more platforms for traffickers to reach people and monetize it. So it's a big problem.
And what do we need to look out for? Because, I mean, so many children and teenagers are on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook and all of these
Yes.
things. What do they need to look out for?
Yes, so basically anyone that's reaching out to them through like a direct message that seems like, a stranger or not someone that they know, but they're complimenting them or they're kind of like flirting with them, and their profile may seem like it's someone their age, but they just really have to be cautious. Like, who are these people trying to get in contact with me and why?
Okay. And what should the parents do?
So parents should definitely have some kind of internet safety protocols with their kids. They should talk about, like, don't talk to these certain people or someone that's reaching out to you that you don't know. But also, like, there's apps that parents can control. So having controls on the phones, or like setting limits and boundaries in a healthy way, of course, but like having that conversation young in order to get their mind like, oh, I can't just trust everyone that's on the internet. Like, I think that parents need to just understand they have to have a role in their child's online, image.
Right. And I know that it's in the title, but is sex trafficking really about sex, or is it about something else?
So sex trafficking involves sex, but it's not really about sex.
Okay.
So in traffickers' eyes, they see sex and children as like a way of money, right? So all of this is about economics. They see these adults and kids as a way of generating money, and generating money with unlimited resources.
Okay. So it's really about supply and demand.
Yes.
I mean, I hate to put it like that, but that's what it is.
Unfortunately, that's exactly how it is.
What kind of person, and of course I know you're no doctor or anything like that, I just want your educated opinion.
Yeah.
What kind of person would want to have sex with a child?
Yes. I think it's hard to wrap your mind around because, that makes no sense, right?
Yes.
But traffickers and people that are buying specifically, they have either an unhealthy relationship with intimacy, or they have a twisted concept of what is sex, and then they end up engaging sometimes with child sex because they have not either noticed that it is a child, because the way they do these advertisements, it's really hard to tell whether this is an adult or a child, which is what traffickers want. But on the flip side of that, unfortunately, there are people who do have a twisted concept of desire and sex, and so they see the child as an avenue for that. But these typically are people who have disposable income.
Okay.
Yeah.
And by disposable, I'm assuming you mean they're like rich or wealthy.
It doesn't always have to mean that. So,
Okay.
like, if you think about our area, we have a lot of plants, right? They generate a lot of money, and the people who work there sometimes have that disposable income because of just not necessarily the wealth of it, but just it's quite a bit with that type of sect of work. And so disposable income for someone, an average person, may not be the same for someone who's rich, but it's still, disposable for them.
Okay,
Yeah.
I completely understand that.
Yeah.
How can my audience, my listeners, and my viewers, what can they do to help prevent sex trafficking?
Yes, so what our audience and people could probably do is just learn as much as they can. Like,
Okay.
you can learn the signs, if you can educate yourself. There's all kinds of resources, we give trainings, but just being aware of the problem and then also speaking up about things, which I know that's something that you probably heard about, see something, say something, but
Right.
that is like what we push, is if you're staying silent about this or not identifying these kind of things, then it's continuing the problem.
And that leads directly into my next question. If we spot a child that we think maybe, and I think that's kind of where the rubber hits the road, because
Yes.
sometimes we don't know, we see a child and we don't know if that child is being sex trafficked or
Right.
if they're just, with dad or mom
Right.
or uncle or somebody.
Yeah.
So if we see a child that we think may be sex trafficked, what is the next step?
So identify the situation, like if it's an emergency, like if there's something going on like at that moment, call 911. They have trafficking teams to address that. But if it's like something that we're just not sure about, I would definitely do the National Human Trafficking Hotline. And I have that information if we want to share that.
Yes, what is that hotline?
Okay, so it is 1-888-373-7888. And so they can call, they can also go on the National Human Trafficking Hotline website and do a report through there.
Okay. And I know whenever we learn about and we're taught about like sexual assault and sexual abuse, they normally say that the children know their abusers.
Yes.
Is it the same thing with sex trafficking? Do the teenagers normally know the person?
That's a bit of like a tough question, because these traffickers are going to start with the grooming process, so they're going to make a way that they know the child, but they're going to start that like through engaging in conversation or building a relationship with the family. So most of the time though, our kids and people who have said that like they knew who their trafficker was. It wasn't just someone off the street randomly.
Okay, so it's really kind of both. It's someone that you probably but it's also someone that maybe has groomed you to make you think.
Exactly. They
you
want to
know
build
them.
that trust so that way they feel completely vulnerable with them.
And what are some ways that they do that grooming?
So they'll start with a lot of compliments, tell them they're beautiful or handsome or pretty or whatever it is that they feel like the child is lacking. Because basically they want to give them whatever it is that they're lacking. So that could be shelter, that could be food, that could be love. If they wanted to make a career out of becoming, an influencer, they're going to offer that. Like, they're going to offer them the things that they either want or need and build that trust, and that is kind of like the process. So they will do or say anything to build that trust.
Okay.
Yeah.
If a child is sex trafficked, and I know I keep saying children, but it's teenagers also.
Yes.
I'm just using that word interchangeably.
Yes.
What is the likelihood that they would be found and recovered?
Yeah. So whenever it's someone who's like missing, it's unfortunately like 1 to 2% out of the people that are recovered. But those are of the like 30% of kids that are missing. But what we see in our own local area is that they're not being kidnapped. They're actually being trafficked and still sometimes living at home.
Okay, so some follow-up questions to that.
Yeah.
What is the difference between kidnapping and sex trafficking?
So I think that people put sex trafficking and the human trafficking umbrella all together. It includes, people think it's about kidnapping and harboring, and it's not always. And actually what we commonly see is that they will be in a situation where they will have that kid still doing their school activities, still living at home, still living a somewhat normal life, because they want to continue that cycle and they don't want to get caught. So if they kidnap, that's going to be much easier for it to be, something's wrong. Right. So they don't want people to notice that something's wrong. Yeah.
How can someone be sex trafficked and still be at home and still go to school and live a normal life?
Yes. I know it's just so crazy how it happens, but most of the time it'll be that like they are someone who maybe was going through a bad relationship, or they have prior history of abuse or a bad home life. And so they may be living at home and still have like that normal family dynamic, but what they don't have is like that love. And so traffickers know that. They want to get in their circle. They give them that love. And so they will sometimes pick them up on the weekends and take them to hotels, bring them back home. They still go to school. I mean, it's going to be very difficult to notice it's happening.
And the children, the teenagers, they don't say anything about this?
Yeah, so because of the grooming process, they are basically having this secret with their trafficker. And so that's a way of having this power dynamic. Like, there's an imbalance of power. The adult and the trafficker is in control of the kid at that point. They're not really making their own calls or shots, and they either don't feel safe or they don't feel like this is wrong. A lot of people will say they were in love with their trafficker. Yes.
And maybe that's because we're dealing with children, we're dealing with teenagers. Why would they think they're in love with their trafficker?
So I think it's very similar in abusive situations too, and it is very resemblant to a Stockholm syndrome, but it's different. Through the grooming process, they're building that trust, they're building those secrets, this relationship. And so most of these traffickers will try and build a romantic relationship with the kid. So I know that it may seem like, how is an adult getting access, but through social media or through being a friend of the family or just someone in their circle they know. Sometimes in culture it's kind of like something that kids are like, oh, we should date older, or older guys know more, older people. And so they also see them as like a source of like, almost like a parent sometimes. So like it's this adult that they feel like they can go to for anything, count on for anything. And so it becomes, the lines are so blurred by that point that they feel like, oh, I'm indebted to this person, I love this person, they would never do anything to hurt me. So they don't feel like they need to leave. They don't feel like something's wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
And let's talk about the other side of that coin with boys.
Yes.
Do boys feel that way or fall in love with their sex trafficker as well?
It just depends on the situation, because unfortunately, I'm sure we'll touch on it later, but familial trafficking is a thing, and we do see like fathers trafficking their own sons, or mothers trafficking their own daughters. But with boys specifically, what we see is that through gaming sites or online chat things, they think that there is a girl who's talking to them through a fake profile. Behind the screen could be, a guy, girl, anyone older, but they think they're building like this friendship or romantic relationship with a girl. Oftentimes there's an exchange of nude videos and nude pictures, and then by that point they have sent these things thinking, I'm in this relationship, and then it'll come to a point where they're like, I don't want to do something, no. And when you say no to a trafficker, that's when everything changes. And so in most situations, then they're going to like threaten them, or use some sort of like violence to say, like, if you don't keep sending me these things, I'm gonna hurt you. And so because of that, like, that's the typical situation. It's very much an online way that they're reaching out to the boys.
Okay.
Yeah.
When that happens, when the teenager says no, whether it's a girl or a boy, to the sex trafficker or potential sex trafficker, what should that child do at that time?
Yeah, so just because they've had a moment of like, oh, I don't want to do this, they still may be like so scared to do anything about it, because traffickers will threaten their life, or they're just scared that what has happened is going to come out to their family, and so they're going to feel really alone. And so we want them to know, like, there is services like Harvest House or the National Human Trafficking Hotline. But what we do when I go to schools and talk about this is we talk about safe people. If you can identify a safe person that you can go to for anything with no judgment, it's not always mom or dad, teaching kids about safe people. So like, if they may not know who that safe person is, they may never talk about it. So that's why it's so important for these like national hotlines, campaigns just out there, so like kids know there is help.
Okay. And let's talk about some of the, I guess, words used associated with sex trafficking.
Yes.
The first one is recruiting. What does that mean?
So recruitment is basically a way that they're going to get whoever it is that's being trafficked to bring in more people to be trafficked.
Like friends?
Friends, yes. We have had situations where it's been someone that's in high school that they have trafficked their own friends or attempted to. But at that point, we have to remember that who is really in control in that situation is the trafficker. The kid may not realize what they're doing is wrong. They may think like, oh, I'm bringing my friends into this, they're going to make money. Like, that's how they may see it. And I'm not saying it's every situation, but they are not making their own decisions really at that point. Yeah.
And what about the word harboring? What does that mean?
So harboring is whenever they're being held against their will, and sometimes there may be like threats of violence to ensure that they stay, but it's basically someone being held.
Okay. The next word is soliciting. What does that mean?
So soliciting is usually through sex ads, so just a way of spreading that, hey, this person is for sale, or this person is offering sex, and so it's usually a way of advertisement.
How can someone I'm assuming this is online, right?
Most
ads?
of the ads are online. I mean, it can also be word of mouth. There's many ways it can happen, but typically it's through online ads.
How are they able to solicit or sell sex online? Wouldn't like Google or whoever catch on to that?
You would think, and sometimes it's not going to be obvious that it's a sex ad. It could be like a click on here to watch this porn site, and then attached to the porn site is sex ads.
Okay.
Yeah, that's typically how it happens.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the last word we have is grooming, and that's something word that we've been using so far throughout the podcast.
Yeah.
What does the word grooming mean?
So in simple terms, it's just a way that they use manipulation, and a way of emotionally disarming the person, disarming their boundaries, and building this over time, so that way they feel like they trust their trafficker, they'll do anything for their trafficker, and that they're basically owned by their trafficker. Yeah.
Who are the suppliers for sex trafficking?
Ooh, if we knew.
True.
But it's typically people that are wanting, like, they're having a sex trafficking ring attached to like a business sometimes. Sometimes it's just single pimps, or sometimes it's attached to gangs. These are the suppliers.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about the buyers? Who are the buyers? And again, I know that's a if we knew.
Yes.
But to your best kind of guesstimate.
The buyers have all been identified as different types of people with different backgrounds, but again, it's typically people with disposable income. And there are women who are buyers, but the numbers typically indicate that it is men who are buyers. Yeah.
Is sex trafficking a big money business?
I saw that a pimp or trafficker can make about $300,000 a year just from one person they're trafficking. And so I believe that if they have many, it probably is a big business. So,
and how many do they normally just have, like one child or two? So kind of what's that
like
number?
on a small scale, like if it's just one person doing it, that may not be, but we do see that a trafficker will often have many victims that they are trafficking at one time, because it becomes a network in a way, just like a gang. There's like someone who knows someone, someone's friend knows someone, and they get pulled into this life, as we call it. And so it oftentimes is a big network.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are some specific things that parents, grandparents can do to protect their children and their grandchildren from sex trafficking?
Yes. We hope that they will educate themselves, learn about the signs, put internet protocols in place, make a safety plan. There's free online safety plans that go over what would you do in this situation, who would you go for help, having these things and conversations at an appropriate age. We normally start these like with 6th grade, but there is an appropriate age to talk about safety for each age.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is the emotional damage and the physical? I mean, obviously, I feel like the physical is probably self-explanatory, but I would like for you to explain that to us. What is the emotional damage that these children suffer from being sex trafficked, and what is the physical damage that they suffer?
Unfortunately, there's both, right? So with the physical, sometimes there can be STDs, sometimes there can be physical injuries in intimate places where they, potentially had interaction with a trafficker or someone. Sometimes it can be broken bones, it can be, injuries that may not be visible, they may be internal. There's just many ways that can happen. And then with the emotional aspect, sometimes they will wake up with night terrors, they'll have anxiety, they'll have many mental health issues that take counseling and years to heal from. Yeah.
Are the children, specifically speaking of the girls, do they ever become pregnant because of this, and what happens then?
Unfortunately, they do become, we do see that they do become pregnant from their traffickers. Sometimes their traffickers are family members. In this case, with the, I guess, protocols our state has in place for that, the only thing that we can do is just offer them information about resources or information about resources to help them sign up for WIC or things like that.
A child that has been sex trafficked, are they ever the same after that?
Unfortunately, they're never the same, but through healing and counseling, they can become a resilient version of themselves. And oftentimes we do see that survivors of trafficking will become advocates of the anti-trafficking movement into adulthood.
Now, and we talked about it a little bit earlier, but you work at Harvest House located in Beaumont, Texas, and you guys do a lot with assisting and helping victims of sex trafficking. So let us know, what is your title, and then tell us what Harvest House does.
Yeah, so my title, I'm Education Coordinator for Harvest House. My name is Brittany DeLaGarza. I've been with Harvest House for about 9 or 10 months at this point.
Okay.
But what we do at Harvest House is provide those advocacy services for survivors, or we even do that for kids who are at risk of being trafficked, because that can be identified too, part of that prevention. And then when I go to schools, I talk about all these warning signs and how to prevent it, and safety plans and safe people. We do community presentations. We really try and hit every point, and we're not doing this alone. Harvest House is part of a big team with the Texas Governor's Office, where we have law enforcement involved, Garth House is involved. So this very much is a team effort, but we specifically provide victim services.
Okay. And how do people have you come out to their facilities? Would they reach out to you? Do you reach out to them? How would that go?
So you're referencing like referrals?
Right.
Yes. So sometimes, well, the majority of the time, we get referrals from law enforcement, from a situation where they have picked up someone or identified someone, and we get an advocate dispatched. We have in the past have referrals from sometimes families. So it's just, there's many ways that people can reach us, and we can just get them set up as quickly as possible. They can call our office. We have those services available 24/7 for someone to be able to talk to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if someone wanted to have you, for example, Brittany, come out to maybe their school or their church or their organization and teach and educate about sex trafficking, how could they get in touch with you?
So they can contact me at my email. That's the best way to get a hold of me. So it's Brittany@harvesthousebmt.com.
Okay. And I'll make sure and have that information in the description box below. So if you need to get in touch with Brittany, then you absolutely can. Now, Harvest House is a nonprofit organization, obviously. What is the mission here?
So our mission is to end child sex trafficking in Southeast Texas. That is our main mission.
Okay. And do you think, or do you feel like that's possible to end it here in Southeast Texas?
I think that it's something that we can work towards. It's never going to be an easy journey, and we don't know how long that might take, but we are here to do the work. We're here to keep going, and it's going to be this prevention aspect that's really going to set up stopping it in future generations. We can address the problem now, but we also want to prevent it from happening in the future.
Here in Southeast Texas, is sex trafficking a major issue, and maybe we just don't know about it?
I feel as if it is, and I'm coming from this because my background was not in trafficking at all. Before this, I was working at the Museum of the Gulf Coast in Port Arthur, so education has always been my strong point. So when I started learning about, wow, this is a big problem here, a lot of people don't realize what is happening in their own communities.
Right. How long does it take for a child to be groomed?
Yes.
I know they start with a simple hello, but how long does it take to build that trust, to build that relationship?
That is a great question. It can take weeks and it can take years. Traffickers will play the long game if they feel so inclined to, but the grooming process is going to be different for every kid, just depending on what kind of boundaries they have in place.
The slogan here at Harvest House, see something, say something. Explain that to us, please.
Yes, so basically if you see some sort of suspicious activity that you think may be trafficking or even just an emergency in general, like, you have to report, because even if something doesn't happen with that specific thing, that information could help another case or another child or another person going through trafficking. So we push reporting.
Okay. I feel like some people, and myself included, wouldn't truly know. I feel like I would be apprehensive about, I'm not sure if this is what that is, and then you call and it's not sex trafficking. And I think maybe that would prevent a lot of people from, see something, say something, because you don't really know, which I know falls back to the education part of it. But should you still just call anyway, just in case, even if you're not sure?
Yes. We've spoken with Beaumont PD about this, and they said, we would rather you make a report and it not be trafficking than you not report it. So I think that reflects very much the opinion of everyone, is that make a report, even if the information doesn't seem important, it could help.
Okay. What is your personal intention in this space, the sex trafficking space?
So my personal intention is to just make as big of a difference as I can, because for me, I was never in this just for a job. For me, I really care about the community and bettering it and just getting as much education out there, because I have a passion for these kids that are going through this, and I want to make sure it doesn't happen.
How can people who's watching, who's listening, support Harvest House?
So they can donate monetarily, or they can donate their time. Either one is just as important. So if you go online, you can go to our website at harvesthousebmt.com, or you can also give us a call and we'll get you set up.
Now, I just want to reiterate this again. If someone thinks that they see, and I know that we're talking about in Southeast Texas, but I would assume this is across the country. If someone thinks they see a child or a teenager that's being trafficked, they should call, regardless to if they think it's not or it is.
Right, and also we deal with the Texas-Louisiana border being a problem a lot because of the casinos in Lake Charles. So there is that interstate things that happen between us, and so we encourage whatever you see that you feel maybe suspicious activity connected to trafficking or anything else, make a report. If it's not an emergency, National Human Trafficking Hotline. But if it's in the moment emergency, don't intervene, because that could be harmful. But call 911.
Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Now, my last couple questions for you, Brittany. What would be your advice for an adult that's watching this to help prevent child sex trafficking, whether that's in their home or in their community?
I would encourage them to get their hands on as many resources as they can. If they have kids, learn about how these traffickers are reaching out to their kids, having those internet safety things in place, safety plans. If you're an adult who's just in the workplace, learn how to identify that in the workplace. If you work somewhere where people are coming in and out, learn how to pick up the signs of when someone is being trafficked. Learn how to report, because if we stay silent, we are continuing the problem.
And what about the teenagers, the boys, the girls that could possibly be trafficked? What advice or information would you give them?
My advice to them would just please be careful what you're sharing online and who you're talking to online, and apply that same thing in real life, in person. Just be careful who you're letting into your circle. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sitting down with me and educating myself and educating my audience about such a difficult topic, but a topic that's not, I feel like it's not spoken about and educated about enough.
Yeah, no, we appreciate you reaching out, because I think that this is so important to bring this platform to such a tough topic for some people. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but having these tough conversations is how we tackle it.
Absolutely. And my final question for you, Brittany, is who do you think would make a great guest on the podcast, but you have to help me get them on?
Okay, I'll do my best. So I think the Museum of the Gulf Coast is a great organization. When we talk about safe places and safe people, I think it's also important to remember those things in communities. So having places where kids and families can go and spend time in a healthy way and learn about things is kind of tying into this. So I would recommend them as the next guest.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sitting down and talking with me on the podcast.
It was so nice to meet you.
Absolutely. Thank you. And thank you so much for tuning in and joining. You can get this podcast and all of my other podcasts on YouTube Podcasts and Apple Podcasts. And remember, you always have time to listen and learn on the go.
Enjoy the ride with Crystal Petrie Consulting. So inspiring, pushing you to your dreams. You can be anything. Oh, it goes with purpose. It's time to make it happen.